Have you ever stopped to think about how an empire reacts when it loses its brightest star? In New York, right in the heart of the Bronx, one question has lingered beneath the gray, cold sky since the very first days of this new season. What happens when a player who restored hope to a franchise built on championships, driven by demanding fans, and anchored in a city that accepts nothing less than greatness, simply walks away? The echo of Juan Soto's bat, the sound that once set Yankee Stadium ablaze and reignited the hunger for a World Series, has fallen silent. And when that silence spread through the Bronx, many believed the end had already begun. But what no one expected was that, behind the stadium gates, a quiet transformation was already underway. Throughout the winter, while baseball entered its traditional off-season and the city lights drowned out bar conversations and podcast debates, the Yankees were wrestling with an internal dilemma that few fans could have imagined. How do you move forward without Juan Soto? The franchise, one that built its entire reputation by stacking trophies and collecting superstars, now faced an unsettling reality. The man who nearly carried them to a championship was gone. And not just anywhere. He crossed town. To the Mets. And what if this was the deepest wound the Bronx had felt since Derek Jeter hung up his cleats? What if losing Soto wasn't just a lineup adjustment, but rather a direct blow to the pride of the most successful franchise in baseball history? What followed was something even the most connected insiders couldn't predict. While the baseball world debated how the Yankees would fill the massive void Soto had left in the heart of batting order, the team didn't just adapt. It blossomed. What once seemed impossible slowly began to take shape. The Yankees' offense, stripped of its brightest star, simply took off. In the opening months of the season, New York didn't just hold its ground. It raised the bar, leading the league in OPS, ranking inside the top 5 in nearly every major offensive category, and displaying a relentless approach on a field that bordered on ruthless. But perhaps the most fascinating part wasn't the power itself. It was how that power was now being unleashed. The long balls were still there, especially coming off the bat of Aaron Judge, who once again started the season posting MVP-worthy numbers. But there was something new woven into the team's DNA. Manager Aaron Boone hinted at this transformation during an interview on SportsCenter, right after a solid win against the Kansas City Royals. Boone didn't hide what the stat sheets had already begun to reveal. We're a little more athletic with 4 or 5 guys who are really top-end runners on this team. His tone was calm, but the message, for anyone reading between the lines, was crystal clear. The loss of Soto had forced the Yankees to rewrite their offensive identity. Versatility, once a weakness haunting the Yankees in recent seasons, had suddenly become a weapon. An offense that had long depended on sheer power was now able to attack defenses in more ways than one. More base running, more stolen bases, more unpredictability. The Yankees had stopped being just a home run machine and were turning into a complete, multi-dimensional threat. The number of stolen bases is only the surface of this new approach. Last season, the Yankees finished just 24th in stolen bases, collecting 88 by the end of the year. Now, just a few weeks into the new campaign, they've already racked up 14. If they maintain this pace, they could finish at the very top of the league in that category. But this shift wasn't born out of coincidence. What started as a necessity slowly evolved into a new philosophy. Behind closed doors, the conversations weren't about how to replace Soto. They were about how to redefine the attack entirely. Sources close to the club suggest that, even before the last season had officially ended, there was already a quiet consensus. Relying solely on superstars and brute force had led the Yankees into a dead end. When Soto left, the front office didn't panic. Brian Cashman, as cold and calculated as ever, began reshaping the team's profile, while Boone and his staff doubled down on physical preparation, game awareness, and an aggressive running game mentality. Veterans like Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton embraced the plan. They knew that without Soto, individual talent wouldn't be enough to carry the team through the season. And the younger names in the clubhouse, especially Anthony Volpe and Everson Pereira, saw the perfect opportunity to accelerate their development on the biggest and most unforgiving stage in American sports. And maybe it's this very blend of necessity and opportunity that's quietly shaping a new era in the Bronx. A city that once watched legendary teams led by immortal names is now watching a roster that seems less reliant on marquee players and more committed to the simple idea of winning as a collective unit. And it's no coincidence that even without Soto, the wins are still piling up, the stats remain strong, and the energy from the fan base feels more alive than ever. The question that refuses to go away is, just how far can this group go without Juan Soto? Is this evolution sustainable? Could the Yankees, for the first time in a long while, be on the verge of proving that the weight of the uniform is still heavier than any single name wearing it? And when the trade deadline rolls around, what will Brian Cashman do? Will he chase another superstar to fill the space Soto left behind, or go all in on this new blueprint? A formula that blends power and speed, youth and experience, tactics and raw instinct? Whatever the next move is, one thing's for certain. The Yankees, a team many believe would crumble in the aftermath of Soto's departure, are showing the world that in the Bronx, the game is never over until the final out. Now I'll ask you, is this just a first piece in a quiet rebuild that could lead New York back to the top? Or is this early season surge just a flash of brilliance before another storm hits? The season still has many chapters left to be written, and the storyline promises twists worthy of Hollywood. Can you imagine it? Kenley Jansen, one of the greatest closers of the last decade, the same man who once proudly wore the jersey of the arch-rival Boston Red Sox, stepping onto mound at Yankee Stadium to lock down another victory for the Bronx Bombers. The crowd on its feet, lights flashing, music blaring through speakers, and that old, familiar gesture of trust from the manager signaling that, in that moment, the man wearing the most iconic pinstripes in baseball is the one who will decide the game. A scene that, just a few years ago, would have seemed impossible. An image that, for any Red Sox fan, would feel like a nightmare dressed in new colors. But in the real world of Major League Baseball, where rivalries are fierce but business is cold and calculated, nothing is impossible. And if there's one team willing to turn the page without looking back, it's the New York Yankees. The 2025 season began with sky-high expectations in the Bronx. The roster was built like an army, set on chasing a title the fan base already considered long overdue. And at the center of that hope stood Devin Williams. When Brian Cashman pulled the trigger on the trade with the Milwaukee Brewers back in December, the city erupted in optimism. Williams seemed like a piece written straight into the script of a championship team. The arm that had been awarded National League Reliever of the Year twice. The specialist at shutting down offenses in the ninth inning. The natural heir to names like Rivera, Wetland, Gossage. But the beauty of baseball lies in its brutal unpredictability. With each passing inning, each save slipping through his fingers, the trust placed in Devin Williams began to wear thin. Pitches that once vanished into the strike zone were now being hit hard, and the hits that used to be rare were becoming all too common. Smiles in the dugout slowly faded into worried glances. The bullpen, which was supposed to be the backbone of security, became the weakest link in the chain. And in New York, there's little room for patience when it comes to results. Behind closed doors, away from cameras and headlines, the conversation no longer revolves around if action will be necessary, but rather when and who will take over Williams' role if the situation doesn't change. Because the Yankees know the games played in April and may build a path, but it's the games in October that create heroes and villains. And there's no room for mistakes when it comes to postseason baseball. And it's in this context that Kenley Jansen's name is beginning to gain traction. At 37 years old, he seems to have quietly rewritten his narrative out in California. Now, wearing an Angels uniform, Jansen hasn't just returned to form. He's displaying the kind of physical and technical sharpness many thought was long behind him. An immaculate ERA, saves executed with surgical precision, cold-blooded command in high-stakes moments. A performance reminiscent of his prime days in Los Angeles, when he stood as a final wall in the Dodgers bullpen, or even his stint in Boston, where, even in the twilight of his career, he found ways to silence critics and seal victories. Meanwhile, the Angels are living a curious dilemma. The team is winning, fighting for every inch in standings, but deep down, the front office knows Jansen only signed a one-year deal. Which means, if the right opportunity arises, if the right offer lands on the table, baseball, as always, will choose the most rational decision, not the most sentimental one. And when it comes to bold moves, no one acts more aggressively than Brian Cashman when he feels the season's clock ticking against him. Jansen's potential arrival in the Bronx wouldn't just be a swap of names on paper. It would be a statement move, one that sends shockwaves to the clubhouse, the fan base, the media, and above all, the rivals. It would be a clear sign that the Yankees are willing to fine-tune every detail, correct every flaw, at whatever cost, to finally return to the World Series. It would also, of course, be a heavy psychological blow to the Red Sox, who would have to watch a former hero now donning the shield of their greatest enemy, chasing the very dream he spent years trying to destroy. And as strange as it may feel to picture Jansen in pinstripes, the reality is he possesses exactly what the Yankees need. A resume that doesn't crack under postseason lights. The experience of someone who's endured and conquered the longest nights of October. And the cold-blooded poise that seems to be missing from the Bronx bullpen right now. While Williams fights to rediscover his form, the conversations in the hallways and front offices are in full swing. Phones ring, glances are exchanged, and possibilities are being weighed. The pressure, as always, is relentless. The Yankees don't have time to spare. Every bitter loss, every blown save, every game that slips away in the final inning feeds a doubt. Is sticking with Williams an act of stubbornness or faith? Can the team afford to wait for him to find his command before the season slips through their fingers? Or is it wiser to act now, before the best market options vanish? In Boston, the irony has already become a topic of conversation. The Red Sox are now entrusting their ninth inning to Aroldis Chapman, another old face from Yankee Stadium. And it would be nothing short of symbolic to see the Yankees answer back by bringing Jansen to walk the same path in reverse. Baseball loves these twists, these swaps of roles that turn old villains into new heroes. What no one can deny is that, so far, the Yankees have kept their offense sharp, their starting rotation solid, but the bullpen remains the biggest question mark. And in a game as merciless as October, that's a weakness that can cost dearly. That's why the vigilance never stops and the radar stays active. Jansen may not be the only solution, but looking at the market right now, he seems like the one that fits the Bronx's needs best. Someone who's lived through every phase of the game and still knows how to win it. Now, everything boils down to one question that only time, and maybe a single phone call, can answer. Will the Yankees hold out and bet on Williams to regain his form in time to be the ninth inning hero come October? Or will they make the move early, bringing in someone who's already proven, time and time again, that he knows how to slam doors and crush hopes, even on the tensest nights? Whichever path they choose, the season is only getting started. And if the past has taught us anything, it's that in the Bronx, the biggest moves almost always come when no one sees them coming. And if this is just the first chapter in a silent bullpen overhaul, then buckle up. Because the coming weeks could bring more plot twists than any fan is ready to handle. So if you're part of Yankee Nation, now's the time to strap in, because this ride promises high drama. And of course, this channel is your place to follow every detail, every rumor, every deal that could reshape the destiny of the Bronx before the season reaches its climax. Now, tell me in the comments, would you trust the ball in Devin Williams' hands for the ninth inning in October, with the season on the line? Or would you rather see Kenley Jansen, once an enemy, now a potential savior, climb the mound as the last hope for victory? Because if there's one thing baseball never forgives, it's hesitation. And in the Bronx, the big decisions are getting closer by the day.